It was a hectic day on Capitol Hill as lawmakers tried to hammer out a deal.
We are joined now by Congressman Seth Moulton. Congressman Moulton, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Well, the big news this morning, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz said this morning that he will move to oust Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House this week. If he files a motion to vacate, as he says he will, how will you vote and how likely is it that McCarthy is out of that job?
Well, look, it depends on what McCarthy is willing to do. This week, McCarthy, for the first time, really, in his entire tenure as Speaker, demonstrated a willingness to work across the aisle with Democrats to compromise on getting good things done for the American people. Up until this time, including all of this past week leading up to last night, he was just subservient to the Matt Gaetz extremist wing of the Republican Party. If he's actually willing to work with Democrats, and I think you might find some Democrats maybe not willing to vote for him for Speaker, but willing to table the motion. That's what's called essentially postponing the vote to keep him in place until some later date. Frankly, one of the concerns of Democrats, myself included, is that whoever goes after Speaker McCarthy, whoever succeeds him from the Republican conference, could be even more conservative and hardline.
So would you be a no vote?
So my point is that it depends on what McCarthy is willing to do. If McCarthy is really willing to come to the table and offer a genuine deal with Democrats to work with us on bipartisan legislation, then I might join some other Democrats in voting to table the motion to have a Speaker vote and send the House into chaos. If he's not willing to come to us and make a deal, though, so that we can actually have legislation in a bipartisan way, then I'm certainly not going to vote for Speaker McCarthy. I voted against him 15 times already.
Okay, Congress now has just a few weeks to agree on a more permanent spending deal. How do we avoid ending up in the very same situation we were in come November?
Well, it's actually the same answer, which is that Speaker McCarthy has to be willing to work with Democrats. Up until yesterday, he was just listening to the extremists like Matt Gaetz in his caucus. And as a result, we had extreme funding bills that people wouldn't vote for. There were a lot of amendments over the past week to funding bills that even fellow Republicans voted down. It wasn't until McCarthy was willing to work across the aisle that and Republicans could get together and fund the government. But let's not forget, in that bipartisan vote to fund the government last night, there were still 90 Republicans who voted to shut the government down. 90 Republicans voted to shut the government down under Speaker McCarthy. So he's really going to have to choose. Does he want to work with those extremists and send us into another shutdown? Or does he want to actually work with Democrats who stood up to work across the aisle to get government funded to avert a shutdown and who want to continue cooperating to get government funded properly going forward?
This spending plan that we have now leaves a lot up in the air, notably funding for the war in Ukraine, which is not included in it. How do Democrats get those agenda items back on the table?
Well, I mean, that also could come down to Speaker McCarthy's fate, right? That's something that he could legitimately offer Democrats to preserve his speakership. If he were to come to us and say, hey, I will guarantee a vote on Ukraine if you table Matt Gaetz's motion to vacate the chair and we don't go into chaos trying to elect a new speaker, I think that's something that a lot of Democrats would be receptive to. We understand how important the fight for Ukraine is to our own national security. I mean, we don't want Putin to go into NATO next and have American troops on the line. We don't want Xi Jinping in China to see us backing down from Russia and think that he can just start a war in the Pacific that could be devastating to the entire world. So there's a lot on the line with Ukraine funding, and Republicans are playing politics with it. Democrats understand the importance of national security, but that's part of a deal that could be made in the future to avert another government shutdown.
Thank you, Congressman Seth Moulton with the 6th District here. Thank you so much for joining us and for that timely insight.
Good to see you.